All right, this week we received an email by someone named Guido. It was a very long, very wonderful email full of very insightful information. In the email, there was a couple questions that he asked us, and we're not going to get to all of them, but we're going to attempt to answer 3 of them. And are you ready to start with the first one?
Yeah, well, and let me just say the general theme of this was this this fear. So Guido is a guitar player, has been playing guitar for a long time and has done a lot of practice, but has not really been able to get beyond just practicing, or hasn't been able to record music and start growing beyond that. And he talks in depth, again, really well worded, and we've gotten some kind of similar things along these lines from other people too, so I don't think this is a unique fear at all. But he's kind of got this, he calls it an almost extreme version of perfectionism, where there's this fear of pursuing something like music and not being able to live up to your heroes or the people you idolize, and just not being successful at it in that sense. And that fear keeps him from really doing anything other than just practicing. And so he asked us a few specific things, and we'll kind of get into it that way, I guess, like answer some of the more direct questions, and then we can move on to this sort of bigger picture question of what how do you deal with the fear of aging and this fear of just what happens if I pursue music and I'm just not that great at it, or I can't live up to these expectations that I have.
Right. So that's what we'll be talking about through all of these
Yeah.
questions. Okay. Number 1, Michael. You majored in music, and upon graduation, you realized you had no practical plan for becoming a performing musician. So you became a music teacher instead. However, when you talk about this job, you often state that you really enjoyed it, and you don't seem upset about the fact that you never became a performing artist. You also seem to be very happy having switched to an entirely new career path. Nevertheless, I imagine you must have been disappointed upon finding out that reaching your initial goal wasn't possible. How did you deal with this disappointment? How did you manage to decide that you would give up on that goal and fully commit to another one?
So, great question. Uh, and in general, I think self-analysis is a bit hard. It's hard for me to say what, for me to analyze the factors that went into me feeling the way I did or making those choices. But I'll give you the best take that I got. I think there were a couple things that contributed to me just deciding I don't want to do, I don't want to be playing guitar and trying to become a professional classical guitar player. That was my major, was music performance in classical guitar. Couple of things. One major one, which we've mentioned a little bit on the show before, is that I felt like I hit a wall in terms of getting better. And I even specifically remember when that realization hit me. I remember where I was sitting and what I was doing. And I just had this fact that I was kind of staring down of, I really want to, and I'm working super hard. I'm working harder than I have before, and I'm not getting any better. And that was just this huge point of deflation for me. And in fact, that right there, that specific problem was part of what prompted the past year or so, or at least part of what we've been talking about in the podcast. That was a
Mm-hmm.
major thing. A couple other factors that went into it. One is that how often do you hang out with someone and they put on a classical guitar album or show you their new favorite classical guitar piece? Uh, I would say, on average, absolutely never has that happened. Uh, it's a small world. It's a handful of people playing the same music that everyone else is playing. Most of it's 100 years old. And not that, I mean, there's some great music, but it's not a big field. So there's not a lot of room for people to be playing it. And the ones that play it professionally are obscenely, amazingly good. It's how do I put this? It's an area that is not. It's like convergent. It's almost like a competition. You can be, if you want to be a really good golfer, the better you get, the smaller the crowd, and there's a couple people that are the best in the world, and there's this whole layer underneath them. But the better you get, the tinier it is, and you're competing for that top spot. And that's kind of what classical guitar performance felt like to me. Is that it feels more similar to a sport or something. And contrast that to other areas like being a composer or something that's more divergent, where you can create music that other people have not made before, and it can be very different and very unique, and you're kind of like trying to almost spread out from other people and find new things that are different. And there's some competition to it too, especially within a particular genre or something, but it's more open-ended. So that was the feeling I got from classical guitar. And I didn't want to compete with that for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest ones was that, well, okay, so I got stuck. There was that. But then also, assuming I decided, okay, I'm going to get through this somehow and figure out how to improve again, even if that had happened, in school, you kind of know who the people who are going to do really well, people who are going to go on and be performers and be at least moderately successful. You kind of know who they are, and you kind of know why. And without getting into the nuances of their mentality and practice habits and everything, just by and large, they don't really do anything besides that. The really good guitar players are the ones who just play all day long. In a lot of cases, they did poorly at their other academics because they just didn't really see the point. And in a sense, they're right. Like, who cares about music history if you're trying to be a guitar performer? You just need to play guitar all the time, to the point where most of the rest of their life is kind of excluded. And that to me just didn't seem like fun. I mean, some people they're totally happy doing that. I want to play guitar for 12 hours a day, and that's what I do every day for the next 10 years. For me, I was too distracted by other things. I got really interested in playing piano. I got interested in composition. I got interested in just tons of other stuff. Eventually, I got interested in teaching and started doing that. So I just, never mind the success and the prestige of being a classical guitar player who's incredibly good and tours around the world playing. I just didn't really want to be somebody who narrowed their life down to that. That's my answer, more or less.
So was it this? But that was your main goal for years, right? Is to be a performing
Well,
classical guitarist, or was it, or did you just kind of choose it and go through school and just figured that would be a good way to start a career? I don't know. How did you get to that decision?
I to be honest, I don't know that I really even thought it through very much at all. Uh, I remember I was in school for engineering. I was at UCF for engineering, and I hated it. I mean, I absolutely hated it. And in retrospect, I think I actually could have enjoyed it, but part of it was just me being really tired of it and feeling kind of boxed in. Like, I was always a math and science kid growing up. And so the idea of getting outside that was very appealing to me. I just felt like, everybody thinks that I can only do math and science, and I want to do something else. So there was just part of this like personal desire to kind of break out of that mold that I had for myself. But also, I had some awful, awful, awful professors for this one semester. I can't state too often how shocked I am that universities will hire terrible, terrible professors who are bad at their job. Don't get it. Universities, why do you
Dif-
do that? Just
Different conversation.
different conversation, but just quick reminder. Why do whatever. So I just had some terrible ones. I think one guy even got like fired or put on probation the next semester because he was that bad. Um, which, I mean, figure universities never do that, so he had to have been really bad. Anyway, bad circumstance, not very happy. But so yeah, engineering kind of sucked for me, And I just had this feeling like if I could just get into the music program, I'll kind of prove to myself that, I can do it. And I spent months and months just locked in a room practicing obsessively, trying to be good enough to pass the audition. And I did. And then it was this feeling of, I love music. I love playing guitar. I don't care about anything else. I just want to do that for the next 4 years. This is all I want to do. I will be happy if I'm just doing this. And I never really, I mean, 4 years feels like such a long time. I figured somewhere in that 4 years it would occur to me what I ought to do. Uh, a part of me was thinking, well, maybe I could be a performer, but I never really realized what that entailed. And then part of me was thinking, well, maybe I could be a professor or something. That would be nice. But the numbers on that do not add up. You figure there's one professor for every 500 guitar students or something. Like, it's ridiculously competitive unless you're, most likely you wind up teaching middle school band or something, which would be, some people are awesome and love that, but not something I would want to do.
So you didn't have this super clear vision of what you wanted to do, and it wasn't totally shattered, right? I mean, I
No,
know you got stuck, and that was probably very upsetting,
yes.
but it doesn't seem like you had some giant life goal that was shattered from this, right?
No, the opposite. I had a very hazy, like, let me just get in there and then, I'm sure it'll come to me somehow. I had the opposite of a clear life goal. And no, it was not shattered. In fact, the reason I started teaching and just switched to teaching was I started teaching to make money because you got to live. And then it was great. It was really enjoyable for me. That was something I just loved. Um, so I was like, oh, cool. I'll do that for a while. Same reason I switched to programming, because I started doing that and I was like, wow, this is super fun. Let's do this.
So you've been pretty agile with your career choices. And
That's like a very positive way to put it. I'm more just this guy who's chasing butterflies or something.
Okay. Let's see. I guess, are you ready to move to the next one?
Yeah. You're going to have to read it for yourself because I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Daniel, you mentioned on one of the episodes that when you decided to pursue a career in art, you simply stopped worrying about whether you'd succeed or not. I admire this, but quite frankly, it seems terrifying. How did you manage to emotionally accept the risk of not succeeding?
This is a great question, and I want answer it for yourself because I think this is part of what I was not able to do, and I think it's part of why I got stuck. But what's your answer?
Okay, well, first, he says that I said that I simply stopped worrying about whether I'd succeed or not. And I'm not totally sure what he's referring to, but I think that I probably said something along the lines of
Your camera
is
is black. I'm sorry, but it's like your moment here, and your camera's off.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. So, I probably in the past on here said something along the lines of it didn't matter if I was going to make it or not. I was going to be an artist anyway. And let me just give some context as to what I probably meant by that. And that I didn't really care if I failed because I already failed. I was living at the time when I was 23 deciding to become an artist. I was living, if you could even call it that, in this empty dead shell of a dream that I did have. I wasn't like you. I had this very clear idea of what I wanted to be. I'll try to go quickly, but if you rewind back to, say, high school, everything was going awesome. I was a cool kid that played guitar well. I wrote music. People told me all the time that I'd be super famous and, I'd be a musician and whatever. And I would be wonderful. I won the talent show in high school because I just made up a song on the spot and it was just so cool. And so I felt great, and I felt as if my future was set, and it was an all or nothing. I was going to be this musician that somehow magically would make it, whatever that actually meant. I guess I never really thought about, but it was very clear that's what I was going to do, and I would do anything for it. I mean, I would I would do anything. I mean, short of selling my soul to the devil at the crossroads, I mean, I would do anything to get there, to get to this, I don't know,
Yeah.
dreamy musician state that I thought I was headed towards. Okay, so graduate high school, it's pretty cliche and kind of sad to think about, but you know, as the years go by, in high school I was teaching music at the music store, and that was cool because I'm like this cool guy that teaches guitar. He's a cool teacher. And then 5 years later, it was about 5 years later, all my friends have moved away. They're all in college. Some of them graduating, you know, headed towards their bachelor's or whatever, being super successful, buying houses, getting rich, whatever. Meanwhile, my money gets less and less and less.
Right.
And now I'm this guy teaching music. And, you know, I heard it all the time and said it myself. Those who can't do, teach. And there I was, not doing, just teaching. And sucking at it. I was a horrible teacher. I did not enjoy it like you did. I really liked many of my students. I really wanted them to succeed, of course. But I felt like I was letting them down every day because I just sucked at teaching. So
okay, let me just say, I don't think you sucked at teaching.
Maybe that's a bit dramatic, but
yeah, I think so. Also, the teaching bar is obscenely low, so if you just show up, you're doing okay. Sorry.
It wasn't fulfilling for me.
Fair
I
enough.
think you got a lot out of it, and I think if I did it again now, I feel like I could, and there would be a lot of aspects that I would enjoy, but back then I was kind of young and naive, and I could never let go of that thing that I wanted to be. But I had run that into the ground. All of that determination and, I don't know, my willingness to give up everything else but that did not mean that I got it. It meant the complete opposite. I just got nowhere. Just like you, it was that deflating moment of, I could not succeed. So when you ask why I didn't care if I failed or not, it's because I already failed. And I was at a point where I had to do something. And yeah, I definitely cared if I failed because that would mean that I would be in the same spot I was in, which was awful. And I never ever want to go back there. But yeah, I did.
So
I did.
But so during that, at some point you said, I am going to make an honest to God attempt to become a professional artist. And
Yes.
and you were sort of pivoting out of, I'm going to be a musician and succeed at that somehow, anything short of selling my soul. Like what
How did I get to that?
Yeah, or like what was the plan? What was your reasoning there? Because it's almost like you're going from something that's really hard to something that's also really hard. You know, you
Right.
didn't just say, okay, I'm going to start working at a car wash and like work my way up through the ranks or something.
Did you ever play Angry Birds?
Yeah, of course. Everyone played that.
Okay. Well, I haven't played it in many years, but the way I remember it, which could be wrong, but the way I remember it is that you have your little Angry Bird and you put him into your slingshot, right? And you pull that back. This is where I might be wrong, but when you pull that back, it gives you this projected path of where the bird's going to go, right? Or where your little ammo's going to go. And, you know, if it's a close object, that projected path is pretty reliable. Say if it's really close, you pull the slingshot back and you fire, you have maybe an 80% chance of hitting the target, right? But if you pull it back really far and aim it really far into the future, that projected path gets less and less reliable. So maybe now you have a 5% chance of hitting your target, right?
I don't know if that's how the game worked, but for the sake of this like life metaphor, let's just assume that it did.
Okay, well, that's how I remember it.
That's sure.
So what I think happened was sometime in high school, using all of the evidence around me and what people told me and how I felt at the time or whatever, I had in my mind this projected path to this very vague but somehow seemed clear to me target far off in the future, like 10 years away or something like that, where I would just make it as a musician. And at the beginning of that projected path, it felt like I was on it. And it was very exciting and fun, and everything felt like it was in place. It's like my identity was matched up with what I was doing. But as the years went by, I began to feel further and further away from that projected path until it took about 5 years for me to realize, oh, I failed. I'm not going to hit what I wanted to hit. Like, I am going the wrong direction. It was very clear. It became very clear that it's not happening. And so what happened for me, first I had to, I honestly don't know if I've even accepted that for real. Like, accepted that that's totally over. I think I keep it in this, on the very top shelf of my brain, all the way in the back. It's shoved back there somewhere. It's got a bunch of dust on it, but I think it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not famous. That sounds stupid, but just, I don't know. Someday I want to write songs again. Really, I guess I just want to do that someday, but it's so far back in my brain that I've shelved it for a long time, but I don't think I ever really gave up on it. But what happened was I realized that I had failed, that I missed my path. I was not going to hit the target, and I was depressed and miserable, and it was awful. And then it just kind of hit me that I could do that again. That's not the only target that I could try to hit. I still got the, oh God, that's stupid. I still got the slingshot. I can take another shot. I can use all of this dedication and determination that I've always had for something else, and maybe I might hit that one. And so at that point, it kind of transitioned to, okay, maybe I can make a thing out of this art. I think for someone else, they probably could have taken another shot at the music thing, but maybe, tried to think things through differently, or just reevaluated, recalibrated, and then come up with a different idea of the future. But for me, it just happened to be a different field. It happened to be art instead. Well, go ahead.
Well, what made art different? Like you took 2 shots. The first one didn't work, at least not so far. It's still on the shelf somewhere. But the second one did. Like you actually got promoted 2 weeks ago to whatever comes above artist. I don't know.
Okay.
Like, so, you have a career in art doing concept art for a very well-respected company that's like, pretty up there in the industry, and you just got a big promotion and everything. Like, you by any metric, you did it with art. It worked. What made it different?
James Gurney.
Okay. Yeah. So why?
The path to becoming a skilled artist was much more clear than the path to becoming a musician that made it, whatever. It was, the education was easier to follow for me, and it just made more sense to me how to actually improve what I needed to do in order to get a real career. That was more clear to me. With the music stuff, it was just so, and if I could revisit with how I think now, it would be totally different. But for some reason, I just approached music the wrong way. But that's one thing I wanted to bring up, is that, technically, I set this goal of making a career out of being an artist. And I hit that goal. And I'm successful in that regard. But at the same time, I also feel like I failed in some ways, because
okay.
but this is life. I mean, this is what you do. I set a goal and I hit the goal, but then you step back and you realize, oh, it's not just about getting a career. Just like you, it wasn't all about, graduating as a classical guitar performer. Like, you did that, but then you step back and you realize, oh, there's a lot more to it, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to actually achieve this. This is
Right.
really what I should have gone for, or whatever. So, I've worked in this company or this career for like 5.5 years now, and when I first got it, it seemed like this dream, and it was wonderful, and it still is wonderful. There's many wonderful aspects about it, but in terms of the actual art that I wanted to do, it's it's branched off, and it's very different than what I set out to do. And so in some ways I feel kind of like I failed. And so in just recently with our whole new
Um,
quest and everything, and we've kind of talked about this, I'm looking at everything in front of me and I'm recalibrating, rethinking where I'm headed and trying to steer things in a way where I'm a little bit happier, which is just what you have to do through your whole life, I think. So now I'm trying, I got rid of my freelance stuff and I got rid of excess things. So now I can focus, some of my free time into stuff that I really do enjoy doing and what I
mhm.
used to do, when I made that goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's
Okay.
okay. Let's get to the final question here because this is kind of the bigger one, and maybe we can
Right.
like pivot into trying to give the big answer here.
Right. And all of this is very connected. So it's hard
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make a narrative out of this. But
Right.
all right, here it is. How do you deal with the limits that age puts on your ability to achieve creative goals, especially in a professional capacity, and stop the age at which you achieve something from being a measure of its value? So this is very age centered. The feeling of getting. Okay, this is what I don't want to do. I feel like we could dedicate many, many episodes to, does age make a difference on your ability to learn, right? Or, how does age actually affect what you're
Yeah.
doing? And we could discuss that, and I think we should at some point. But I think what he's getting at, and feel free to disagree, but it seems to me that this is a feeling that he's having, not a statement on intellect or ability
Yeah.
or abilities. It's just a feeling, which is, oh God, I'm too old to achieve what I want to do, or is it too late? To me, that's what he's getting at. Is how do you deal with that feeling?
Yeah.
Does
I
that
yes, no, I if you read the entire email, I think that's 100% true. He's not asking, is it possible to become good? Here's what's really funny. So I when I was teaching a lot, I'm sure you heard the same thing too. You would you would hear this all the time, right? I remember when I was more freelance teaching, I get emails from people asking about lessons, and all the time this same thing would come up of I'm worried that I'm too old. I want to be good at music. I've always been interested, but I'm too old. And you can almost play this game of trying to guess what their age is, and you never can because just it's like random how old they are. They could be. I mean, I've taught people who are in their 80s, and people who are 16. Like, is it too late to start? I'm already 16. I don't know. Like,
right?
like it's just it. The point is, it's again, we'll set aside the question of how does age actually affect your ability to learn and whatnot. Um, it is just a fear that is in everyone. Another common one is I want to play piano, but my hands are too small. Or I want to play guitar, but my hands are too small. Just the too small hands is like a deep rooted fear in a lot of people who want to learn to play. Or just the I don't think I'm talented. I don't think I have the gift. That's this thing that people have. There's all these different sources of the same problem, which is this fear of I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this thing that I really want to do. So
Right.
uh, age is one of them. I actually I'm super familiar with that. In fact, I had some kind of weird stuff going on with my eyes a few months ago. I can't remember if we mentioned that in the podcast or not. But and it turns out everything's pretty much fine, pretty much. But it was kind of scary for a while. Like, do I have glaucoma? Is there something weird? Do I have a retinal tear? All this stuff. And the kind of the eventual answer to that was, nah, your eyes are just getting old, and they're you're getting all these floaters and weird things in your vision. It's just part of getting old. And I'm kind of like, oh, so I'm getting old. Cool.
Right.
I get to watch my vision degrade over time. And I went, I mean, I'm doing far better now, but I went through a pretty serious trench of, you know, I nothing in my life has been getting old so far. I mean, I we've talked about this some. I'm a power lifter. I lift weights, and like I've just been getting stronger ever since. And I started running, and I've been getting faster. Like to me, in my mind, I'm still young. I'm still going up. And then this was like this thing of no, you're not. But at least for this particular thing, your eyeballs, which is kind of an important deal, they're going down, and you get to watch it live all the time, no matter where you are. And that really, really put this whole age thing like at the forefront of my mind, uh, in a way that was like pretty bad. I mean, I don't want to like. It was pretty bad. I mean, I was questioning literally everything I did, everything I said. I was thinking, I is my sense of humor going away? Is my ability like I mean, I'm not kidding. It was really terrible. I was worried like maybe I have like early onset dementia or something. Maybe like my brain is going. Maybe it was really bad. So, okay, all that to say this, I'm very familiar with this fear. Um, and it's just one of the fundamental fears of human beings of hey, we got a window to do stuff, whether it's, your whole life or whether, you can think about your prime years or whatever you want. You're not going to be here forever, no matter what. So there's just like this feeling of what if I just can't get it done? Or what if again, it doesn't have to be age. It could be, what if I'm just not talented? What if I just don't have it? It's just fear.
So, well, first off, I also suffer from this ex- like a lot. If you ask anyone that's ever known me, surely they would tell you that I suffer from this. I'm pretty sure, I bet, I was born and then the next day I probably said, God damn it, I'm too old to be
Yeah.
great because I
I,
wasted a whole day. Yeah.
I'm telling you, uh, uh, people like I said, you could try to guess how old a person is who's suffering from this fear, and you can't guess. It's random because people suffer from this their entire life.
Okay. What do you think causes this and what can you do about it?
Okay, so I just finished reading a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. This has been suggested from our community a couple times. I think Ryan, Jerry suggested it. I think maybe even our mom suggested it. I can't remember. It's this book from 1974. And if you really want to feel weird, that is almost 50 years ago. So it's been around. And it's really great. Really, really great. And I've never said that about a self help book before. It's also very short, which is my favorite part. Um, but in it, the author, he was a competitive tennis player, not quite pro level, but kind of just underneath. And then he became a tennis coach, or they call it a pro, but it's actually doesn't mean a tennis pro. It means somebody who's like works at the tennis club and gives instruction and everything. And they're usually tennis pros are very good, um, and they're coaches basically. So he's discussing how he uh, he'll coach people or would start out coaching people, and he would do what pretty much everyone does. And I've actually been a tennis coach for a little while. Did the same thing. But when someone's trying to learn tennis, you get them out there and say, okay, well, here, hit the ball. This is called a forehand. Here's how here's how you hold your racket. Here's pull your racket back to here. Put your left foot out in front of you. You put your left hand out in front of you for balance, stuff like that. Swing down and then up and over your shoulder. Like kind of give them all these instructions, and they go do it. And they're like trying to follow the instruction. You're like, wow, that was awful. Try doing this. Try doing that. You just kind of keep giving them instructions on like move your elbow, do this, do that, and it's usually terrible, and they don't get it. And pretty often, like as someone is playing it, even if somebody who's like might be farther along. They have a pretty decent forehand, but they're trying to improve it and say, well, try like turn your grip a little bit, try bringing your racket head a little higher. You start giving them tips, and it's like pretty often their performance just degrades the more instruction you give them. And I've witnessed this all the time. In fact, one of my biggest, especially now that I think that I have a better handle on how to teach people stuff, but you'll have somebody trying to learn something like how to ride a bike or how to wakeboard. We used to teach people how to wakeboard a while ago. But if you're in a group, a lot of times this person will be trying to learn and they'll kind of say, I can't quite get it. And then everyone starts giving them advice. Like one person will say, oh, well, like try, doing this. And another person will say, well, like move your weight back. And then just people start piling on instruction. And like every single time, without exception, it always just gets worse. And I hate it. And it's like, you can't just be the guys, everyone shut up. No one say anything. Only let me teach this person. But like that would be the right thing. Okay. So the point of this is that, actually, this is an example he gives in the book. Well, not this exactly. Sorry, I'm jumping around. Imagine, just as a thought experiment, imagine if adults had to learn how to walk. Some kind of like stuck in the Matrix scenario where when you're 30 years old, you get pulled out, you have an adult brain, you have adult experiences, you think like an adult, but you've never actually used your legs and you don't know how. And so you have to learn to walk for the first time at 30 years old. Just imagine that situation. Imagine how many people would never ever learn how to walk. There would be instructors on how to walk. There would be all these different schools of thought. There'd be the heel first group and the toe first group and everything. And there would be people who would try it and they would take a hard fall or maybe 2 hard falls and go, I'm never doing that again. This is terrible. Like people aren't meant to walk. Like adults would have so much trouble trying to learn how to walk if you had to learn it in your 30s. So many people would fail. I can tell you this because I've taught adults how to do basic stuff, like how to strum a chord on a guitar, which is infinitely simpler than learning how to walk. And many of them can't do it because they're constantly in their own head going, oh, I'm not talented. I don't think I have the gift of guitar playing. And I think I'm too old. And I think I'm this and I think I'm that. And like, they're just so consumed with these thoughts and judgments that they fail at it. Something like playing a G chord on guitar is not hard. And I don't say that to belittle anyone who can't do it. It's actually just not very hard. You can learn it pretty quickly. It's way easier than learning how to walk. But babies learn how to walk literally every single time. They never fail. Unless there's something physically wrong, some kind of disability or something like that, babies always learn how to walk. And like that is honestly kind of incredible if you think about that. People always learn how to speak. Again, unless something's wrong, you acquire a language, and that is very, very complex and difficult, but you do it every time. And babies are stupid. They can't like reason about, you can't even talk to them. You can't give them instruction. All you can do is just kind of show them how to walk. Like they just watch you doing it and they just try it. And they're not judgmental because they don't have the mental capacity to really do that. They just imitate and do it and they fall down. They just don't really care and they just do it again and again. And they're not really thinking about, man, it's taken me like longer to walk than my friend. Maybe I'm just not good at it or whatever. They just do it and they get it every single time without fail. And that is like an incredible thing to think about. Okay, so back to the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, which again was really great. So the thing that the author is kind of pointing out here with his instructions and everything is that adults are just thinking people, rational people. You don't have to be an adult. You could be 14 or something. We put all these constraints on ourselves and we have this constant judgment and like mentality of trying to like take instruction and follow words and do things. And it very, very often goes completely wrong and we can't do it. But he calls it like the inner self or the self inside of you. And what he means is just your body, your unconscious nervous system, those lower motor neurons, the central pattern generators, like those systems that you aren't conscious of. That inner self is able to learn. And it literally never goes wrong. again with the baby learning to walk or the person acquiring a language. Like it's just that's what it's for, and it does it. And if you're in the baby mindset of just do it, it works. And the thing that prevents it from working is all the other stuff that your conscious mind does, all the judgments, all the everything that causes you to be tight and to not just explore and experiment and like all that stuff. That's what prevents that process from happening. So here's my point. If you want to be a really good musician, you can, because you're a human and humans are able to get good at stuff. If you want to be able to ride a bicycle by doing a handstand on it, you can do that. Like actually literally anyone could do that unless you have something that prevents you, like physical preventing you from doing that. Like you could do that. That is a thing that human beings are capable of doing. If you put yourself in the right environment, in the right mindset, you can get good at that stuff. So when it I think Guido already knows this. This isn't really news, but I think the core of the question here, or the problem, the thing to really consider is that the question isn't can you become really good at music? Because you can. Because you're a person and you have that inner self. You have those neurons. You have this body. And you can get good at it. You just have to somehow get out of your own head and stop preventing that baby from learning to walk. Is that
Yes. Yes. Okay. So here are some things that I have been doing in the last really just 6 months to a year to try to get myself out of that headspace of constantly judging yourself and keeping yourself back? Because I have, like I said, like you said, struggled with this feeling so many times.
Yeah.
So what I've started doing is a couple things that have actually made a huge difference. Is and in other parts of Guido's email, he mentioned, how do you come to terms with the fact that you'll never add up, something along these lines. How do you come to terms with the fact that you'll never add up to your creative heroes? You know, how do you deal with that? And I have my own, you know, heroes that I've looked up to in the past that are at some crazy unattainable level that if I focus too long on it, it just destroys me. And I get really upset, and I think we all do this to an extent. So what I've started doing recently, and I've been talking to my friend about this too, and he's been doing it too, but okay, in our culture, I'm also bouncing around a lot. In our culture, we look at people who are really good at stuff, and we say, wow, they are phenomenal at this thing. They're really good at what they do. And it's almost as if we move them up the ranks. So, you know, if I look at James Gurney or whatever, he's like, you know, level 100. If I look at, you know, Dean Cornwell, he's level 98 or 105 or whatever.
rude? Yeah.
You almost rank these people with numbers, like they're really high up in the sky, or, you know, this person just started, so they're right on the ground, whatever. And we see it as like this vertical thing. But I've started taking a look. Okay, let's take J.C. Leyendecker. All right, he's this illustrator. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but you have for sure seen his work before. He was around the time of Norman Rockwell, and he is every bit as, at least for illustrators, everyone knows his name, J.C. Leyendecker. He's arguably one of the best, or he's at least up there.
Yeah.
Everyone just seems to love him a lot, and me too. He's one of my favorite illustrators, and I've always looked at his work for the last, I don't know, 7-8 years or something. And I just realized the last month or so that he doesn't paint. Like, I've always considered him one of the best illustrators, like of all time. And I just realized recently that he never paints backgrounds. Like no backgrounds, no environments, no landscapes, no nothing. I mean, he's done it a couple times here or there, and I'm sure he can do it to some extent. But when I've seen him do it, it's super simplified, as if he just doesn't care about it at all. But what he's really good at are these characters, these people, and the folds on their fabric. It's just phenomenal. And these props that are next to them. But he never does, big scenes of architecture or landscapes or whatever. It's just all these characters. And it's weird because I never even thought of that. I just considered him, one of the best. So I started looking at, me and my friend have been kind of analyzing our favorites, but instead of looking at what they're so good at, you start looking at what they leave out. Not what they're necessarily bad at, but what they choose to just leave out.
Yeah.
And so I'll look at, James Gurney, who is so proficient in so many different things. But if you compare him to one of my other favorite illustrators, Sid Mead, James Gurney does, reconstructions of the past. He does, he paints dinosaurs, he does epic architecture, he does all kinds of things. But it's very based on the real world. Even if it's fantasy, it's very realistic. He doesn't do epic dragons. He doesn't do super high fantasy stuff. He leaves that out completely. And most of his stuff is just kind of based on the past and on the real world. If you look at Sid Mead, he called himself a futurist because he was, I don't know if obsessed is the right word, but he was obsessed with the future and I mean what we would really end up doing. And so he would theorize about the future and paint these very intricate scenes with technology that he has thought through. I mean, he used to be like a vehicle designer. I mean, he's designed all kinds of things. He's an engineer and he was very intelligent. And so his artwork is very much in the future, and his figure work, it's good, it's passable, but he doesn't really care that much about the figures. He cares about these epic, futuristic environments and this technology that they'll be using. And so if you compare him with James Gurney, it's like if there's a Venn diagram, they almost just don't touch. I mean, they're both traditional artists. They're both one of my favorites, but what they're good at is so far apart. And then if you introduce J.C. Leyendecker, he's like, they don't touch at all if it was a Venn diagram. And if you start thinking about that, it's just so surprising because previously, I just view them all as, if you are incredible or so good at art, you can, do whatever you want to do, and you just reach this God level, and, But it's not like that. The people that are very, very good at what they do is that they know what to leave out. And if you think about it, it's almost like if you were going to rob a bank, okay? You go in there, even if you can, break into the bank and you get to the vault and you open up the safe and you see gold everywhere and cash and just mounds of cash. And think about this as your education and all these skills, right? So you start, grabbing the cash, putting it in bags, and you add the gold bars and you add everything into the bags that you have. And then you try to run out of the store and you can't because it's too heavy, right? And then the cops show up and they catch you. And you never got anywhere because you thought that in order to have a successful bank robbery, you had to get all of the cash, all of the gold, right? But that's not everything. You have to get enough, right, to be rich and to make it successful. You don't want to grab a single dollar bill. You have to get enough to get out of the bank and run from the cops and get away, right? So you want a lot of skills. You want to grab a lot, but you have to be able to keep going because that's not the whole thing. And so I've seen a lot of people, myself included, where you obsess about the skills. It's like you walk into the safe and you're like, I gotta have the gold bars. I gotta have all the cash. And you gotta have everything. And then you realize, oh my God, my life's over and the cops are here and I didn't get anywhere. And if you look at the people that are really, really good at what they do, they know what to leave behind. And they know what to do to get out of the bank with what is valuable to them and go running and live their life, right? Like it's so many different things. So recently, when we've started this quest to, I'm doing my personal art, whatever, I'm looking for almost for the first time in my whole artistic pursuit, I'm looking at what to leave out. What can I leave behind to make me faster? What can I leave behind to make this easier for me? And that has changed. I don't want to talk it up too much, but it's changed everything for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, because in the past I would open up this book and then I'd think, well, oh God, if I'm working on this, I got to be working on this too. And if I'm working on this, I'm not doing this. And so I end up with 20 books open and I'm going in too many directions. So I've just started thinking about what to leave out, and I've started analyzing other artists and what they choose to leave out and what they choose to focus on and why that makes them so good at what they do. So, okay, I guess my way of thinking on this is if you have that feeling of, oh, I'll never be, and maybe this doesn't apply to everything that we're all thinking, but when you think about, oh, I'll never be good enough, or I'm too old, I'll never be as good as that person. Of course you won't. You've already failed at that. You never will be that person because what they've chosen to focus on, you can never replicate. That's a lost thing. Like, give up on that already. What can you do to be, oh, now we're sounding corny, but what can you do to be you? Like, how do you succeed in this?
It is corny, but I totally agree. You think, you look at Jimi Hendrix, right? Every teenager who starts out learning guitar learns about Jimi Hendrix. And, he was amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen the Jimi Hendrix cover bands. It doesn't matter. No one cares. Like, I don't know what their names are. There's people who can play all of Jimi Hendrix's music perfectly, probably better than he could. But who cares? Because they're just imitating him. Like, the reason he was so amazing was that he was super unique and he had this style that was just like unheard of at the time, right? I mean,
apologies to anyone who plays in a Jimi Hendrix cover band.
Yeah, no, that's like a huge accomplishment, but you're not Jimi Hendrix. You can't be someone by imitating them. Like, they were so impactful because they were unique.
Right.
So
people connect to people, not skills.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great quote. Okay, so backing up a little bit. I said that I got stuck trying to become a classical guitarist and that I felt like I couldn't progress. And now, looking back, I think what happened, a big part of what happened was, well, I blame myself. I kind of blame my mentors a little bit here too, which might be cheap, but I do. But I didn't really know how to get better. And I think I kind of got myself to this point where I really, really wanted to get better. I had spent a year improving really, really well. I mean, I had not played classical guitar for very long at all. I played it for a few months before starting a program. And then my junior recital, which is like this half-hour concert you have to put on, went really well. I mean, I felt great about it. My professor, who I don't think even liked me that much, was like, you played like a master. You were amazing. That was so good. Like, I mean, it was just really, really good for me. And that kind of turned into this, oh, I think I'm kind of good now. Like, I could be a good player. There's maybe something here. And then that just it corrupted my mentality so much where it suddenly was like really important and I had to just focus super hard and I had to get better, and it's like everything just tightened up and it was so much determination and gritting my teeth. And that line from Rick and Morty, it's like my favorite line of the show, like, people make good music when they're relaxed. You don't learn that way. Like, you can't white knuckle your way into getting good. It requires you, again, to be kind of like a baby, where you got to be focused. Focus is very important, and that's a thing we've talked about a lot. And but you have to just allow yourself you got to kind of trust that inner self. I'm going to learn how to walk because that's just what, like, people do that. That's just what happens. And I can learn how to be better at guitar playing if I'm in the right mindset and I'm able to relax and I'm able to focus and like bring my mind into the guitar, and I can figure out what the best things to work on are. But it's like, instead of relaxing and allowing myself to learn the way I was the previous year, it became so important and I wanted it so badly that I just couldn't do it anymore.
So one thing I've noticed is I can I can feel just like this. I can get all worked up about how I'm too old or not good enough, I'll never be good enough, blah blah blah. And then something will happen and I'll just start working on whatever I need to work on.
Mm.
30 minutes later, I've forgotten all about this existential horribleness, and I now have a task to just do, and
Right.
it's almost like the cure for this huge problem is a very, very simple one, and it's just
Yeah.
this thing that's right in front of you.
Yeah. The way I would put that is that the question of, am I too old? Are my hands too small? Am I talented or not? The answer to that question is, I don't know. Like, there, I don't know. Am I going to be successful if I pursue music? Don't know. You're asking whether or not the other humans are going to like your stuff, and nobody can predict that. They can't predict that. I don't know what the next big pop song is going to sound like. If I did, I would write it and be famous. Like, you don't know if you're going to be successful. You don't know any of that stuff. But the only solution to that unanswerable question is to not think about it. Like, you can.
Or, sorry, might sound corny, but try asking the opposite question. What if you are good enough? I mean, really, what if you are good enough and you're just wasting your time thinking about how you're not good enough?
Yeah.
That should be more scary, I think.
Okay. Well, all right. So yes, and I agree. What I think you should do is spend some time considering it from that angle. Like, hey, yeah, it's almost it's kind of like when you're at an intersection and there's a car that's kind of far away and you're like, "Oh, I should go. There's a car though." And then you wait a minute and you're like, "Oh, I should have
Still
gone.
good.
I could still go." But and then you like wait longer, like, man, I could still go, but I didn't. And then just eventually, okay, it's too late. I don't know if you've ever had that moment, but
Yes.
it will be too late at some point. That is the truth. But you can live your whole life inside your own head, making those kinds of judgments, trying to solve an unanswerable question. Or you can just, if there's something you want to do, if you want to play music and you want to put it out there, like, it sounds like, Guido, that's something you want to do. And you can, this does not happen overnight. This is a process that you practice, but you can start trying to put aside those thoughts and allow yourself to just relax and just focus on what you're doing and just enjoy making the music and just pursue that. And you will get good at it. If you're able to get yourself into the right mindset, you'll become really good, because that's what humans do. Everybody learned how to walk. Everybody learned how to talk. Those things are actually super difficult, but we all learned it because we were in the right mindset, because we were too stupid to be in the wrong mindset, which we are now. Again, just spend a little while trying to picture adults learning how to walk. Maybe not everybody can appreciate how hilarious this would be, but as a teacher, I can just tell you how terrible people would be trying to learn how to walk. Because we're just in our own heads. Like, that, to me, that's my answer. It's that your objective, the way to solve that problem, is to just trust yourself and just allow yourself to play and practice getting out of that way of thinking.
The 2 minutes a day thing would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
It's worked wonders for us.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't think this begins to answer everything, but at least that's a start.
Yeah. I mean, that's a friend of mine made a comment recently that I thought was pretty funny. He said that a podcast that induces existential dread defeats the point of a podcast. The implication being that most people listen to a podcast to escape the existential dread. and that ours was borderline. And I think after today, it will not be borderline. It will be over the line. But it's kind of this thing that we've a little bit danced around so far, is that if you start really considering things, eventually you wind up at this level of what's the point of life? Like that's just if you keep asking the why and the how, that's where you get to. And I think that that's kind of becomes this question too of I mean, what if I'm just not that great? What if I become a good but not amazing musician? You know, what's the point of that? But I don't think you can answer that question. I can't remember when it was, but I was watching tennis, like professional tennis. And I remember watching Andre Agassi play his last professional match of his career. And Andre Agassi was, you know, this amazing player and, you know, great career. He was kind of a hothead. Really liked him. And he plays this match and he did okay. He lost. And I can't remember how old he was, like early 30s, I think. And he had even played for a pretty long time, you know, for what was normal. And he, you know, finished and said his goodbyes, and then he left. And I don't know what he's doing now, but I remember thinking, like, man, what's, you know, he already had peaked in his career. You know, he already knew he was declining. He knew he was going to retire. And like, I mean, he was about as good as it gets. I mean, he was way up there. Maybe just underneath Pete Sampras, right? Like incredibly successful tennis player. So by any metric, if you wanted to be a tennis player, that's it. I mean, you're on top. And even then, in your early 30s, you got to deal with the fact that you're done. You got the whole rest of your life, and you will never touch that again. Like it does. There's no solution to that. There's no scenario where you just don't have to deal with the question of what now.
He literally achieved the thing all tennis players, you know, want to achieve, you know, be the best.
Right.
He got that. And then it's like, well, now what?
Right. I genuinely do not think there is ever an answer to that question of like, oh, I did it. I'm there. I'm the best. And everything is great now. Like there's something there still. Like even if you get there, you still got to deal with the fact that you're going to live the whole rest of your life in the shadow of those few years or whatever. Like I don't think it's possible to create this like pass fail situation. You have to deal with the fact that like you're just going to do what you do. And I mean, eventually the sun is going to consume the earth and the universe will turn into this primordial soup of, you know, photons. Like you can't answer that. And it's a mistake to try to answer that question, in my view, of what's the point? I think you have to just get out of your head and allow yourself to just do the thing and enjoy it and just like enjoy learning and try to achieve that mental state of just being happy and exploring and getting better. That's all there is.
At work, we're so close to a Publix that we take walks to Publix all the time. I think I've mentioned that before. But the other day, we walked to Publix, and, you know, we're in a group of 5 or whatever. And we're at the checkout, and I didn't get anything, so I just kind of walked to the end. And then my friend, she walks, you know, she bought a few things, and she goes, "Oh, you didn't get anything?" I'm like, "No, I think I have everything I need." And she says, "Oh, so you've reached, you know, the ultimate state of nirvana or whatever. You now have a life of complete absence of desire." She said something like that. And I'm sure that's, you know, a thing someone says or whatever. But a life with an absence of desire, isn't that what you want? But then I'm thinking about it and I'm like, that sounds awful. But wait, isn't that what we're always fighting for? It was a joke, but it really kind of made me think.
Yeah.
And, you know, I desire to be better, but then what happens when I get better? Then I don't desire anything, and then I don't know.
That's actually kind of a lot.
My theory is that humans are not programmed to succeed. We're programmed to constantly work and constantly fight for things, but we're not actually. We don't have the the programming to deal with a real success,
Well,
which is a
look
little
at how
depressing, but
well, I guess, but look at how often it goes wrong. I mean, look at celebrities or famous musicians. I mean, I'm sure some of them are happy, but the suicide rate is high. If they ever get married, it's for like an hour. I mean, they're hardly problem free, right? People that we consider
right,
to be successful, they can't even go out in public. That I don't think you can find some particular situation that equals utter happiness that everyone else needs to achieve.
right. So I don't know. We spend all this time like dreaming about, well, what if I was as good as this person, or oh, I'll never be
Yeah.
as good as this person. Well, who the hell cares? They're not happy either. So figure out,
Or
you know,
they are,
what
but
what.
that's not why.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of that was, but
Well, all right. Maybe we just leave everyone on that existential note.
good luck, everyone. There is no end.
Yeah, there's no answer. But trust trust yourself and read The Inner Game of Tennis. Honestly, it was super good. I really I think
Okay, I'll read it. Yeah.
you read it and then maybe we can talk about it in more detail. It's really good.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds cool.
Thanks/sorry everyone for this episode. Uh hope we're all feeling all right.
Thank you for this email, Guido. This
Yeah.
was such a good email.
Yeah, it really was. And just to the other people who have kind of asked some things along similar lines. I know we don't respond to everyone, but we obviously read everything and hope this answered some of those questions too. Or not answered, talked about some of those questions. All right, thanks for listening. Feel free to send us more emails at the Overanalyzers podcast@gmail.com, if I can remember our email address. You can leave comments here. You can talk to us in our Discord. We would love any reviews. There's as many stars as you care to fling our way on Apple Podcasts or maybe Spotify. I don't know if they do reviews or not. But anyway, thanks. We'll see you next week.